Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for a channel map. This one for the May, the 5th month, the May, by the way, the May of 2020. So, we're going to recap the previous month's big events, as usual, and then we'll go into plans for this month, covering Brood War and video, and we'll talk a little bit about future stuff. It's a lot more of the same for the time being. But enough things happened in April that we are pushing on forward with some of our plans that perhaps were lofty when I first wrote them down. So I'll talk about those in a moment. First up, obviously, since we are currently waiting some large-scale changes to the AI and some other things like tileset availability and other gameplay function-based stuff that's going to be a little, we'll say, difficult to implement. Based on that fact, we've been going into different territories to try to improve our understanding of the game and our competence as a level developer or a map developer or a content developer in general. And of course, we've found other things to do. There's always stuff to do, even when, making new levels seems out of the question or writing AI seems out of the question. There's always stuff to do. So the first thing that we figured out was, hey, we can make multiplayer stuff, and people were interested in playing multiplayer, like giant free-for-all or team game maps or whatever. So that was the first thing that we ended up doing for much of April was, refurbishing some of the other maps, like the first two Terran missions and the first Protoss mission. And, of course, generating new ones for things like Mapcrap, obviously, and repurposing them into Hydra-ready maps in general. And while I do think that the Fraud Circle Mapcrap map ended up being a bit of a swing and a miss, it was still practice, and practice is always good, especially when it's with the goal of improving. And I think that what happened there is that it was just too big to be a 3v3 map, but not set up properly for a free-for-all or a 4v4 map. And so it will at the very least need some tweaking before it's ready to go from a perspective of actually working with any context of an existing game mode that we know about, like 3v3, 4v4, free-for-all, something like that. So based on those assumptions alone, I think I'm comfortable saying that it was a swing and a miss in that respect. Beyond that, of course, we also did update the game state of Hydra. Those game state updates were indeed pretty large scale in some cases, and Faguta's actually been testing some stuff in the test map that I've provided now. He's making good use of that and reporting all sorts of very niche bugs or circumstances that maybe we don't intend. And so I'm keeping note of those as well. And if you found any yourself and your name is not Faguta, feel free to pop in and let me know about them. But the game state updates have resulted in me running out of flingy entries. So once again, we are going to wait until some changes to the engine have been made before we can move on with our goal of destroying the entire world with our epic co-op campaign in Hydra and our epic game state in general. So we are now at basically what the limit, we are now at the limit rather of what we can do with the modding until some of the limits have been extended in the data structure. So with that said, there's a couple of other things that happened. So we did work a little bit on Inconsummate, not as much as I would have liked, but we worked enough to figure out, hey, I've got a rough outline for the second map, and I know that we're going to be moving over into a different tile set. So my current map probably won't translate very well into that new tile set because of the way that tile set changing works. That being said, I can still use that outline as a sketch, basically a rough sketch, a first draft, and then we can go from there. But the tile set changeover hasn't actually happened yet. So what the specifics are, we're going to take the jungle tile set and we're going to port a lot of it into the Twilight tile set, and then we're going to customize that Twilight tile set, the Twilight jungle tile set, so that the palette is completely different than either jungle or Twilight, and so that we have a very different tile set in general. The reason why we were taking advantage of the Twilight tile set in this case is that we can preserve the water and some of the other stuff that is related to color cycling of the jungle tile set, while also having a faster cycling speed that's present in the Twilight tile set, and in general having more freedom to mess with the palette and more freedom to mess with what we do and do not keep. So I have no interest in using the Twilight tile set in Hydra. It's actually the only tile set I have no interest in using. Everything else has a fair shot. I think there's at least one or two ice maps that I'll end up making, and probably a few, maybe one desert map or something at least could happen in the first three campaigns of Starcraft being refurbished, right? And then obviously in my own projects, I don't actually plan on using the Twilight tileset anytime soon, if at all. So while it remains a useful tileset by itself, it would probably be okay to get rid of. It's the most comfortable tileset, or the tileset I'm most comfortable axing completely, if you can even be comfortable axing a tileset in the first place. So that was my thought process on that, and that's basically what our plans are right now. We just haven't gotten to them, but we at least got to the point where we could make those plans. We could do some like risk assessment on the plan itself, figure out like, is this our best course of action based on what else we can do, and we ended up committing to that, DF and I being the we in that particular case. So that is that. And lastly, this is dipping a little bit into the month of May so far, but we started to dip our toes into melee mapping and exploring assembly, the wonders of reverse engineering, turning assembly into pseudocode so that iquare can turn it into actual game code so that we can have better features faster. That is my role in all of this. I'm going to be the one translating a fair bit of the assembly. That's what he does a lot of before he can even write the code. I imagine it's quite taxing to have to do everything, as I'm still finding it only 2 days in now. I'm still finding it very difficult to do even the first part. But if I can become another cog in that machine and another component there that will allow him to churn out more features faster, then that's going to be better for everybody, not just me and not just iquare. So that's my goal, is to try to improve my understanding of that. And who knows, perhaps because of the fact that I'll be streaming my understanding of it all, some other developers may become interested in doing it, and then they can also grab some of the functions. I imagine like a futuristic world where we have like a Wikidot article on my page that lists all of the functions in their order of hierarchy of what needs to be transcoded into pseudocode. And like people just come in and they edit the page and claim one of them, and that would be pretty cool. But baby steps. Obviously, I only just started doing this stuff, so I don't even know if I'll be able to claim any, let alone get anybody else to. But that is something that I've been messing around with as of late, and so I figured I would recap that, throw that in here. And those are the first two things on the list of Brood War plans for this month, actually. So the plans for the month are to work on melee maps. I want to try to do about one a week. Started an outline for one today on Monday, the 4th, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. So I started one of the next melee maps, not the ice one that I was working on recently. And with any luck, we'll have a lot to play during Fraud Night or during just downtime in between Fraud Nights throughout the week, depending on who's available. And they're going to vary in size. I think my one after this one will probably end up being a 5-player map. The one that I'm working on now was originally slated to be a 3-player map, but I think now it's probably going to be a 2-player map. And so I'm still waiting on that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. And so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what comes of it. And I'm still learning about all the different rotational symmetries and all the different symmetries in general. That's like been a pain point with the first map that I made is I didn't really fully understand that. And I'm also like getting a better understanding of visualizing space, blocking the terrain out before I use all my custom terrain. I mean, with the Hydra tile sets, we have the opportunity to make some very nice and very robust, like visually pleasing, aesthetically pleasing, and also varied maps in the context of us not actually having produced, there just never have been melee maps with custom tiles to my knowledge. Like I basically made the only one recently. So the fact that, myself, Balethal recently was interested, Alexander was recently interested. There's some people out there who are interested in making melee maps that I think for one, it's a better idea anyway for them, because they're going to get a better understanding of what a functional map inside Starcraft for macro gameplay, like for Starcraft's gameplay, what a functional map looks like. Because they'll be making them or not making them, but then having them analyzed and figuring out why on their own, as well as with the help of other people like myself. That'll be like sort of like the CSGO map analyses videos that I did a while ago. That's sort of my goal here, is like understanding my own maps, but also helping other people understand theirs. And obviously for my home game of Brood War, it's a lot easier to just point to the fact that like, hey, this is a problem with this map. And I can actually go in there and like I can boot up, just using the AI debug plugin, spawn a bunch of shit around and look at stuff. And same way that I was talking about last month. But if we have people actively making melee maps, maybe there's a higher likelihood of me actually breaking some of those maps down and explaining why they work. And of course, I also have other maps that like tournament maps that I can go in and break down for people, which would be another thing that would help understand and like sort of ground my own understanding of the game in that sense. And so we might look over those on stream at the very least, if not taking those into like their own video territory. It is a little bit harder to explore them in a video format, but I just haven't explored the opportunity of video formats for that kind of thing yet. Still waiting on people to send me maps to do that with. So here's hoping that the layouts themselves are enough to spark up enough of a conversation so that I can actually make an analysis video that isn't just like 5 minutes of me poking around and saying, hey, look at this, fix that. Okay, bye. So that all being said, this will probably also mean that I develop the tile sets of other things, like not just jungle and not just Badlands. It'll probably mean that I develop the tile sets for things like desert and ice and other things that I just haven't worked too much on recently. Just because of the fact that those are the first two tile sets that I picked for my first two melee maps, but also for the fact that I'm making melee maps and I don't necessarily want them all to be jungle and Badlands because that's all I've worked with recently. So, maybe my next one will end up being Ashworld or something, and you'll see something like that. Or maybe it will be jungle, but it'll be like temple-ified, like temple-focused jungle or some crazy shit that, you wouldn't really explore in a conventional sense. It being a melee map kind of absolves you of the necessity to remain within the realm of reason, at least for now when you're exploring stuff. I think you should try to, when you're in the end stage of the map development, you should try to decorate it in a way that retains the gameplay purity, but provides you with some sort of thematic consistency and doesn't feel unrealistic for the battlefield, while still, it's like you're straddling that line. You're trying to ride the line between not being unrealistic, but also not being so realistic that it ends up harming the gameplay. So you don't want to harm the themes or the gameplay. You want to just be fully immersed in it. And I guess when people are playing, they usually don't pay attention to terrain anyway beyond what its actual functional use is, and that's fine. But for the people who are subconsciously soaking it in and thinking about it, I think the maps should be beautiful to look at. And of course, that's never going to happen with remaster because of their ramps, but we have an opportunity to do something really much better here. And so I'm looking forward to exploring that myself. And it seems like melee maps will end up being quite the focus of this month because it's melee maps and assembly until we can get some AI done. The other thing that I can do, of course, is do more graphic conversions. I have plans to continue to convert stuff from 5 nations. I have a feeling people will be benefiting from those. So one of the things that I'm going to try to do is develop some better, faster system for recoloring the team color to some indexes or indices, I guess, that Starcraft actually benefits from. DF has prepared some resources for that for himself, so I'm going to bother him up for those. And then beyond that, I need to find a way to actually finish these, generate shadows for the buildings, and probably I got to find some place to put them. I don't want to keep uploading shit to started.net. The last thing that was uploaded there was fuck Fallout Boy, which is just some random map that I don't know the context behind. I guess it's a meme or something, but that place is just devoid of people who are actually interested in content. So I got to find some other repository for my files that doesn't involve dealing with really slow loading times like Mega does, and doesn't involve dealing with dead websites like started.net. So still going to be thinking about that. I might approach Mesk, ask him for some web space on his Game Proc website if he would be interested in housing such graphics. But I also imagine that maybe he would prefer to have it be a complete setup or a complete set of graphics, as opposed to me piecemeal adding one at a time as I convert them or whatever. So that's another contributing factor to why I may not be distributing these for a while. But I guess if you see something you like on the streams, feel free to ask for it, and I will try to find some way to publish them in a way that makes sense. Maybe it'll just end up being something on my Wikidot. Anyway, other than that, what else do we got here on the list? I wrote all this stuff down. So I am going to continue contributing towards DF's projects and iquare's project. That former being some under the hood campaign stuff I don't think he's talked about yet publicly, and the latter being Overlord, which iquare has talked about publicly. I'm going to be working on obviously a lot of assembly stuff, which will hopefully benefit iquare as much, if not more, than it will benefit me. Obviously, I'll also be working on desert tile sets and other tile sets, which he's going to be using. So it's sort of like giving back to everybody. It's not just iquare and DF, but these people are who I'm actually contributing towards specifically, and everybody else is just the byproduct of that, which is nice, of course. DF, I don't actually know what I'm doing for him now. He asked me for some plugin stuff, which I did, but in theory, there's probably going to be something else that I have to do, like voice acting or something. Whenever he needs it, he can message me. Obviously, he will. Otherwise, if you need voice acting for your shit, message me. I do actually have some more time now, and as I'll get into later on, I'll have even more time later on. So looking forward to contributing to people. Obviously, I still got alternate stuff to clean up, so that'll be another thing that I try to get done this month. If all goes well, and the assembly stuff breaks through and we end up getting a lot of changes to the AI, and everything else that we need to actually make more Hydra maps, then I will be happy to return to making Hydra maps and, of course, working on the Hydra mod once those limitations are restricted. Don't have any plans for that. Like, I can't plan around that yet. But if all goes well, we'll be back to it. So for video work, actually, as you may have noticed, I just publicated a playthrough of Clan Wars. I will not be doing a review. That's going straight to shit campaigns. I'm actually going to probably explain more about that in a DADCAW, not that specific campaign, but the concept of it. More or less, when I'm going to be working on custom campaign offline playthroughs, there will be an emphasis on education and educational value. And if something is shit, but I've already started the push record button and it's not going to be that soon, or, I just recorded one segment of it or whatever, I probably still will publicate it just so that it can be there as a way to link to the campaign listing, which I recently updated. And it will be a nice explanation of like, hey, this is the kind of content that you can sign yourself up for. And if it's in the shit campaigns folder, it's probably terrible based on the name alone. But you can look through it and ignore my commentary and just figure out what exactly is going on there and try to see for yourself whether or not it would be something that you would actually be interested in. That could be something that is sort of there regardless of the commentary, like I said, and more about the I guess a more objective account of things when you're actually seeing the playthrough and not necessarily listening to the commentary, although the commentary will still be there. And obviously I will try to make it educational where possible. I absolutely could not through Clan Wars because Clan Wars was a fucking disaster and I was constantly confused. But at the same time, it was a short disaster, so I didn't mind finishing it. Whereas I imagine there will be a lot of campaigns that don't actually make the cut and end up in that shit campaign playlist. If that does happen, that's fine. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I will still try to provide timestamps where possible, and I will still, otherwise, if I actually end up finishing something, obviously you could expect a review. But if it ends up in shit campaign, it's not getting a review. The video is review enough. Just watch that. But those will be recurring as more content comes out. So I hope you guys are excited for that, because I'm excited to get back to that. Otherwise, Quake with Dynamo. Quake 1, the very original Quake game. That is what we will be playing next and last for quite a while, other than, obviously, like I said, Brood War content. No real ETA on how long this playthrough will be. I have never played the game before, so I don't know how long the game will be, but I will try to bang it out by the end of May, because if we finish it through May and we also are able to do the podcast style sort of word of mouth, or what's the term, train of thought style of delivery on a discussion, that we're going to do some long discussion video. Basically, it's probably going to be an hour or so of us just talking about classic FPS and going through the history, and it'll be an opportunity for us to do some in-depth analysis and discussion without needing to be me in the middle of combat actually playing the game and him watching me being in the middle of combat. I'm sure there's some mitigating factors there for our analysis, even though I feel like we had some okay analysis throughout those playthroughs. So it'll be a nice way to sort of put a cap on the set of playthroughs for now, and we can revisit it and uncork that bottle and keep drinking when we end up getting to the point where we are we have some more time and when we're playing stuff. I think Dynamo has plenty of time, but I don't, unfortunately. And I do want to move away from Let's Plays, as I talked about a while ago, I think in my previous channel map. So obviously, since we are still planning on doing that and moving away from Let's Plays, they will become fewer and farther in between. The Starcraft campaign playthroughs, maybe once a week or something. I don't really have any plans for those per se, but there is actually one that will merit some more exploration and context. UED Commander is translating a set of campaigns that are done by a gentleman that I forget the name of, who is Russian and wrote them in the Russian language. And apparently one of them even has voice acting, which is interesting. And so once those are translated, obviously the voice acting isn't being revoiced, it'll just be subtitled. But once there are translations finished by UED Commander, maybe proofread by other people, I don't know if anybody's helping him, we're basically just going to go back to the old tried and true, playing those offline, sending those recordings up and talking about them, because there's not only is there voice acting one of them, but I guess they all have custom AI, and some of them even have allied AI and interesting engagements there. I'm sure there's a billion pre-placed defenses and other shit. But that being said, it is something that I can play that actually has some custom AI, which is unfortunately just, I remember back to the Legacy of the Confederation review where I talked about how, unique cutscenes, custom cutscenes, and custom art assets were aspects of a campaign. But in an ideal world, they wouldn't just, like, you wouldn't judge a campaign because it had those aspects. You would just judge a campaign for the quality of those aspects. But it really is gotten to the point where I'm looking at this from the perspective of somebody who just, if there's custom AI in any capacity, I'm more excited about the project, or more interested in the project, I should say, because that is actually so rare. It's more rare than custom voice acting to have custom AI. Nuts, absolutely nuts. So that all being said, that will be something that I point to anyway. But yeah, Quake. Custom campaigns. I do want to go back to the CSGO map analysis for real this time. There's been a lot of updates to the maps, actually, so it does feel a little unfair to go to some of the other contest maps that I have not actually done. There's like 2 or 3 that I didn't finish, or maybe it was like way more than that, and I don't remember. It was like the honorable mentions. And I think there's a few others that I'm just subscribed to that I might as well walk through anyway. But yeah, at some point I'll be going through those. I play a few of them when we do actually, on the rare occasions that we do play CS, I usually end up playing a custom map for Fraud Night as opposed to a default Valve map, because I prefer shining a spotlight on that stuff. But in this context, who knows what's actually going to happen when those videos are going to come out. I couldn't tell you, but I would imagine it would be when I'm on days that I'm not working. And so that means I've got 4 days, 3 to 4 days a week that I might be able to upload one of those videos for. So odds are looking good, but I also double stream on 2 of those days, or 3 of those days, actually. So maybe not so good. Anyway, once the Quake playthroughs calm down, and rather once we're done with those, like I said, hopefully by the end of this month, we will be able to no longer need to double stream for 2 of those 3 days. And that means that we'll have more time to do CSGO map analysis videos, Brood War map analysis videos, campaign playthroughs, other shit like just offline work on stuff. It's going to be great. So looking forward to that. And in the future, compilations and video essays, once again, is still on my mind for the future. I have not made any progress on either of those in quite a while. I am aware of that. I will hope to correct that issue, again, once I have more free time. That's sort of where the free time, after this FPS LP stuff is done, that's where the free time is going to go towards most, I believe. I can't really make a promise per se, but I believe that will be the case. And so, I guess that concludes our channel map. I hope you feel updated and informed, and I hope you've been holding it together during this quarantine time. Otherwise, I will catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.